I think that you have to adapt with the times. It's a very powerful medium of speaking to people, and it gives everybody a voice. Of course, it has, there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of drawbacks to social media, nameless voices, creating chaos in people's lives.
The Teamwork Arts Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we try and go behind the thoughts that animate the actions of those who create the arts. And today we've got someone who had a very successful PR firm, gave it up because she wanted to become a mother, wrote a book called Battle Hymn of a Bewildered Mother, and more importantly, has been making us laugh ever since. We certainly do need to laugh a lot more in these times, don't we, ma'am?
I think so. I think humor is just a way of coping with life. You forgot to mention my novel, but I'll see about that later. Yeah, so I think it's just a way of coping with life. I do it anyway, with or without a plague upon me.
Yes, it's important, isn't it? But tell us the journey that started with the PR firm and then where.
Actually, I started as a journalist with the Asian Age.
Right, of course.
And I spent a few years as a features writer. I wasn't a news journalist. Yeah. And I did that, and then I was interviewing somebody at Star TV. I got hired. You know, when you interview people, sometimes they feel that you could, cross over to the other side. And I didn't like that life of walking with a jhola. It was a lot of struggle,
right,
which would have been great material one day. But I decided that in Bombay, in the monsoon and all, it wasn't for me. So I crossed over. And then I quit Star a few years later. Peter Mukherjee was my CEO at Star TV.
Oh.
M.J. Akbar was the editor-in-chief at the Asian Age.
Yes, lovely names.
And then there was Ratikant Ba. So anyway, so after that, I started my own PR firm called Spin Doctors. And then I think being a creative person, when you're young, you make these, take these leaps of faith, and then you realize that the only life that makes me happy is a creative life. And so I exited that because I had started as a writer, and that's what appealed the most to me. And then I started keeping a blog when blogs were being read a lot. This is after the 2 kids had happened.
Right.
And I was keeping a blog, and then then the book happened, first book happened, which was non-fiction satire about being a really dysfunctional mother. And then the next book was called Love in the Time of Affluenza, which was a novel. A satirical novel set in Bombay society.
Sure. You've also, in an interview, said that you did not see yourself as a lunch mom.
Yeah.
You also talked about something much more serious, which was, of course, the fact that you'd begun to feel a void.
Yes.
Which sort of led you to put pen to paper, so to speak.
Yeah, you know what happened? I think somewhere between the first child and the second child, I began to actually feel very low. And I'm not given to feeling low easily. And at that time, mental health wasn't being discussed very openly. And I used to say, I'm watching a funny movie, but why am I not being able to laugh? Because I think that just having my identity as a mother and having so many hours in the day where I had nothing to do but perhaps read a book or two, and then go to a couple of social engagements and really feel I had nothing to contribute to that, and there was no value add to my life beyond just a lot of polite talk about the weather and about this trip or that holiday. And I just realized that I felt lost, and I felt lost, and that's when I was searching for answers. And I said, what should I do? And I had a lot of work offers because my PR company was really successful. In fact, back in the day, it was an early boutique outfit that even Vinod Mehta had heard about and featured in the Outlook magazine.
Right.
And I said, no, I can't do this. So based on that, I was getting a lot of offers to come back to work. But I said, I need something where I can be around the children. I was sort of an obsessed mother. Be around my girls and watch them grow, and also sort of find a purpose in my life. And that's when the blog started. And then I sort of got back into writing for a lot of publications. And, once you put a pen to paper, a new world opens in front of you, ahead of you. And that sort of happened to me, fortunately. And yeah, so
So what's the process? I mean, you're digitally savvier than a lot of us in our team itself. It didn't seem technology didn't seem to phase you. It does seem to phase a lot of people who have had to adapt to the world of social media. But your analogy is more of the fish in the water kind. And
see, it is, my kids call me a Luddite because they're like,
okay.
oh, mom, you don't know anything. But growing around teenagers, I mean, my husband feels left out because we are two girls. I have two daughters and we are three girls. I'm speaking as though I'm his third daughter. We learn from each other, and then they're posting and teaching me stuff, and I'm talking to them about icons of their generation, which, of course, I find very uninspiring. Uh, I talk so much about Kim Kardashian, you'd think I'm obsessed with her because I've discussed her before. But, the whole value system of this generation and fame-driven life lived off the highs of validation that you get from your like on your posts and stuff. So, I started, it's like you start as a critic and then you become the person you're criticizing. Not that I've become that. I'm saying that now I understand. I used to criticize people who were so social media savvy, and now I sort of understand that. And I think that you have to adapt with the times. It's a very powerful medium of speaking to people, and it gives everybody a voice. Of course, it has, there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of drawbacks to social media, nameless voices, creating chaos in people's lives and creating,
I also think, ma'am,
riots.
Right now the problem is that everyone seems to be in this world of 280 characters and 30-second reels. Everyone seems to be looking at the brighter side of the coin, and not being told enough about the flip side, which is the grimier side, which is the process, which is the struggle. You agree? Do you think that's leading?
Firstly, I think as an audience to this, I must say that as it is, our attention spans are so limited, right? My 14-year-old was telling me the other day that, Mama, now people are only doing a 10-second reel because attention spans have gone even shorter. Yeah. So you're not reading, you're not watching cinema, film, you're not doing too much with your time, but when you're free, and you're free a lot now in between work because, the unproductive life because of the lure of social media, they're just mindlessly scrolling and looking at 10-second things and calling that entertainment. So I don't think that's doing too much for the mind. Having said that, because I'm also a travel writer and I travel a lot, my daughter said, Mama, instead of posting these boring stories that only 100-year-old people are going to watch, why don't I make you a reel or two? And she started posting some reels for me. Okay. So I have myself experimented with that.
Right.
But I'm up for anything. I'll try all these things just to understand. And it's such a rapidly changing world. I want to explore and understand it.
But my point was
the making of. I have some friends who do this now. I have a friend. She's an MBA from France, and she's done an MBA in luxury marketing, and she's an influencer now.
Wow.
I see her life. It is a lot of hard work. They slap on makeup every day, and they have to talk to the camera through the day, and they have to look good through the day, and they have to edit, and they all have cervical issues from bending and editing on their phones. Yeah. It's a lot of hard work.
And that's the thing, because finally that 10-second or that 30-second reel just shows that perfection. So are we beginning to live in a world of false perfection, which is making us forget the fact that it's okay to make mistakes sometimes?
As a writer, I think nothing has changed because people are putting out more from their lives out there than they ever did. Their sexuality, their mental health. So in that sense, I think that nobody is striving for a perfect world. But I don't know how many people in this world read now. So people who are only, using social media to understand universe are getting a very warped view of it.
Right. Writing a book, what's your process of writing a book? How do you go about it? Is it that you first research or find ways to express yourself and then the creative chaos comes in? Or is it a very structured process?
No, I'm actually not a meticulous person at all. So it is, I wish it was a structured process. I think for me, it starts with a visual. And I have an image in my mind, right? And I say, so an image always includes a person. There's one person, there's an image of say, a writer, or the image of a woman looking distraught, or a woman looking delighted. It could be anything, and it's a very clear image. I can see the backdrop and the setting. So it always starts with, you immediately, when you have that, you sit and start writing. And I don't start writing thinking I'm going to write a novel or a book. I start writing, or even if it's an article, it's something that it's a compulsion. You feel you have to put it down. And so that's how it starts for me, and I discover the story as I go along, which is a very lengthy process, and I wouldn't advise writers do that. It's very organic, because it's a great journey, because as you're writing, you're getting introduced to your own characters that you're creating. And of course, at some point, now I've learned, after my editor of my novel, sort of banged it into my head. She said, Shunali, you have to know what your plot is, and then you can play around in that field. So I think now I'm trying to keep that in mind while writing a book. So, I mean, that's how it goes. But I'm also working on a script that works very differently.
Sure. You've also chosen the humor route to expression. Over the years, through decades, through generations actually, humor has been used as an expression to mean a lot. I mean, laughter makes a lot of things go down a lot easier. Also, we're living in a world where everything is increasingly being given an agenda. In that way, it's being seen as something that it might not have started off as being. Are you also finding yourself second guessing the way you're writing because of a certain, I don't know if fear is the right word, or maybe apprehension of it being taken in a way that you might not have intended it to be?
So you mean we're living in a very politically correct universe?
Yes, in a way, and also the fact that we are also living in a universe where there's a lot of attributions to something that you write, which might not be your original intention, but might fit someone else's agenda.
Yes, so I think you're quite right about that. See, the first book was non-fiction, so it was different, but the next one was fiction, and that came out of me very organically. But now when I'm writing, sometimes I, self-edit and self-censor, and then I'm like, but this is coming in the way of my spontaneity as a writer, because we are living at a time where people are wearing very thin skins.
Yes.
And everybody is reactive. They don't respond, they react. Okay. And cancel culture, we see how that's panning out. So I'm saying that these are all symptoms of a very extremist society, a confused society that has a knee-jerk reaction to everything, and where they align with like-minded naysayers because they find strength in that. Now, while from the same social media that we are sort of speaking of sometimes pejoratively, and this society also has sprung the Me Too movement, absolutely. Correct? And it has, worked well for the LGBTQ community as well. Sure. So it has served us very well in certain ways, but it's also it's a dangerous, it's a mind that can explode on you at any time. So even a tweet that you put out, you have to think 10 times, delete, edit, because so it does happen, and it does stifle your creativity to an extent.
Also, everyone seems to have an opinion about everything. In fact, two of them. So, do opinions about what you write affect you? Because everyone's the democratization of expression in that way, as it is of the art, has also, as you said, thrown up some phenomenal names and some phenomenal things. But it's also led to a lot of opinions that aren't really backed by knowledge, so to speak. So, do you let that affect you in the way that you write, or maybe as an expression of how your writing is taken?
So I used to be very active on Twitter in the early days of Twitter, and in the past 1 year, I weaned myself off Twitter, because whether you share an opinion that is well thought out or not, the reaction to that, the trolling that follows, and especially, I'm a feminist, and by feminist I mean that men and women are equal, so I'm not that feminist who is now going to constantly, go after men in our society. I'm just trying to ask for equality, but the kind of trolling I get from men for expressing my opinion about that. And at first I thought, doesn't matter, I'm going to be undaunted by this, but that negativity that comes at you, right? That, madam, everything is not about feminism and everything is not, and women like you should be shown your place. So that sort of a thing happens. So I think that Twitter has become a very toxic place.
Sure.
I feel only heads of states should use it to put their quotable quotes out there, and celebrities. I've completely weaned myself off that. But I think that everybody, like you said, democratization of voice and opinion is good to an extent, because a lot of people who would have never had the chance to express their creativity through these platforms are now being able to do that.
Absolutely. And for someone who wants to make other people laugh, who wants to use the written word sort of to make other people laugh, what would your advice be?
Oh, to a person who wants to write humor?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are days now through COVID when I realized that getting a voice right as a writer is very important, right? And I realized that my voice had become very serious.
Right.
And so I was doing a fair bit of serious writing. And then I was asked to do something that was meant to be droll. I said, how do I get that voice? Because, it's my own voice. That's what I've written my entire life. And now I can't find it, because I think the lockdown and plague and the pandemic, it all of imposed on us and penetrated our psyches in such a toxic way that we all became really morbidly serious. So then I started reading a bit of P.G. Wodehouse, okay? I'd read a little bit of Bill Bryson. So I started picking up funny books and reading them, and then I would put it away, and then my mind it would set the tone, all right?
For sure.
What happens is that in between writing a book where you're trying, or an article where you are trying to make people laugh, and actually that is never my effort to make people laugh, I'm making myself laugh.
Sure.
Okay, I'm that odd person who will read something I've written and say, oh, this is funny. I'm admitting that to you, okay? I'm like, oh, this is funny. And
the best way, but that's the best feeling, isn't
I
it?
can't say that out aloud too often, but I'm like, well done, this is funny, right? And but those moments now have been few and far between. So then when you're writing something that you want to make yourself laugh about, and if you're going to read King Lear in the middle of that, your voice will change and you'll write something which will be a tragedy. So I think for me, I can't read anything too serious while I'm writing something which is meant to be lighter, or actually sometimes I like to say a lot of serious things in a light manner.
Yeah.
So with the delivery, you have to keep yourself in good humor.
Sure, and that's important, isn't it? For the bitter medicine to go down, always nice to sugarcoat it with a nice from the stomach belly laugh.
Absolutely.
Shunali Khullar Shroff, read Battle Hymn of a Bewildered Mom and Love in the Times of Affluenza.
Thank you.
And hopefully you will laugh, or at least grin in a silly way like we're doing, which is always a nice expression to have. But thank you very much for your time. This has been absolutely
wonderful. Thank you. This was fun and quick.
Giving us a peek into what makes those words that much more meaningful. So,
with a pleasure being here, Sarthak.
Teamwork Arts Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you liked it. If you did, remember, we are on social media. Just search for Teamwork Arts Podcast. Remember to follow us, subscribe, comments. Everyone has two opinions, as I said. Spread them to us. No problem. Thank you very much. And what's coming up next? Well, for that, you'll just have to follow us on social media, won't you? Thank you for listening.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, subscribe to our channel now. We have a new episode out every Friday.